A billionaire prince gave up his crown, walked into the streets as a beggar, and found the one thing money could never buy: true love. Before we continue, subscribe, like, share, and tell us where you are watching from. Prince Arif was born on a morning when the palace bells rang longer than usual, their echoes rolling across marble courtyards and golden gates. Ministers smiled wider, servants bowed lower, and the kingdom celebrated as if prosperity itself had taken human form. From his very first breath, Arif belonged to abundance. The palace in which he grew was not merely a home, it was a monument. Ceilings rose so high they seemed to touch the heavens, painted with stories of heroic kings and divine blessings. Crystal chandeliers scattered light like falling stars, and floors were polished so perfectly that they reflected every step, every breath, every shadow. Servants moved through the halls in silent precision, memorizing his schedule, his expressions, even the rhythm of his footsteps before the child himself had learned how to walk steadily. Before Arif could speak full sentences, people already spoke about him. The future of the kingdom, the golden heir, the prince chosen by destiny. His name carried power. Doors opened, heads bowed, promises were made before he ever asked. Yet behind all the splendor, something essential was missing. As Arif grew older, he noticed how every smile directed toward him came with careful distance. Tutors praised his intelligence, but never asked what he dreamed about. Advisors applauded his discipline, but never wondered what frightened him. Even laughter inside the palace sounded rehearsed, controlled, measured. Every word spoken to him carried weight, but very little warmth. At night, when the palace finally slept, Arif lay awake in his vast bed, surrounded by silk sheets and guarded doors. The lights dimmed, the echoes faded, and silence arrived, not the peaceful kind, but a heavy one that pressed against his chest. In those moments, the prince felt smaller than he ever had during the day. He learned early that crowns create space between people. When he entered a room, conversations changed tone. Truth softened itself. Honesty hid behind politeness. No one argued with him. No one disagreed. No one dared to be real. People praised his smile, yet no one asked if it was genuine. They admired his posture, his discipline, his royal grace. But they never asked if he felt lonely. Arif often wondered if anyone truly saw him, or only the role he was born to play. During royal gatherings, the halls filled with music and conversation. Nobles laughed too loudly. Compliments flowed endlessly. Yet Arif stood among them, feeling like a guest in his own life. Their eyes sparkled, not with curiosity about his heart, but with admiration for the crown resting upon his head. When the evenings grew too heavy, Arif escaped to the highest balcony of the palace. From there, the entire city unfolded beneath him like a living painting. Tiny lanterns flickered in narrow streets. Voices carried upward, unpolished laughter, arguments, songs sung without fear of judgment. He watched families share meals on rooftops, children chase one another through dusty paths, couples sit close, whispering dreams that belonged only to them. No guards, no titles, no expectations, just life raw and honest. From that height, the prince envied what money could never buy. Those people argued, struggled, and worked endlessly, but they laughed freely. They loved openly. They belonged to one another without permission. Arif pressed his hand against the cold stone railing and felt an ache he could not name. He had everything, yet felt incomplete. As the years passed, the question he tried to silence grew louder, echoing through his thoughts in the quiet hours of the night. If I had no palace, if I had no crown, if I had no wealth or name, would anyone choose me? Would anyone listen to my thoughts, not my title? Would anyone care for my heart, not my future throne? Would anyone love me? If I had nothing at all? The city lights below continued to glow, unaware that a prince stood above them, longing not for more power, but for a single, honest love. And in that quiet longing, a destiny began to take shape, one that would soon lead him far beyond palace walls, into a world where truth could not be bought and love would be tested by silence. The first proposal arrived sealed in gold. It was delivered on a silver tray, carried by servants whose steps echoed softly through the grand hall. The scroll was thick, its parchment expensive, its lettering flawless. It spoke of ancient bloodlines, prosperous trade routes, and the promise of expanding influence beyond the kingdom's borders. Prince Arif read it in silence. The second proposal arrived before the sun had fully set. Then another, and another. Soon, royal scrolls arrived daily, sometimes 3 in a single morning. Each one carried the same tone, the same polished words, the same careful praise of wealth and power. Noble families from distant lands sent portraits of their daughters framed in jewels. Kings offered alliances disguised as marriage. Councils whispered eagerly of strengthened thrones and secured legacies. Every proposal spoke of gold. Every proposal spoke of bloodlines. Every proposal spoke of advantage. None spoke of love. Arav noticed how no one asked what kind of woman he hoped to marry. No one wondered what made his heart feel at peace. The question was never who he loved, only what the marriage would bring to the kingdom. Even the compliments felt hollow. She is perfect for the throne. Her family will double the treasury. She has been raised to be a queen. Not once did anyone say, she will understand you. As the weeks passed, the scrolls piled higher on his desk, their golden seals reflecting the palace light. Arav felt as though his future had already been decided without his voice ever being invited into the conversation. One evening, the palace hosted a grand royal gathering in his honor. The halls were adorned with silk banners, musicians filled the air with soft melodies, and nobles arrived dressed in elegance that rivaled the palace itself. Arav moved through the crowd with practiced grace, exchanging polite words and measured smiles. A noble woman approached him, her jewelry shimmering under the chandeliers. "Your palace is magnificent," she said, her eyes drifting toward the high ceilings and ornate walls. "I have never seen such beauty." Arav waited. She spoke again, praising the gardens, the fountains, the gold-lined corridors. Only after a long moment did her gaze finally meet his. And even then, it felt brief, almost accidental. She had admired the palace long before she noticed the man standing inside it. As the night unfolded, Arav found himself surrounded by laughter that felt carefully placed, compliments that felt rehearsed, and conversations that never reached the heart. Everyone wanted to be near him, yet no one felt close. He realized then that the crown did not attract love, it attracted opportunity. Later that night, when the palace finally quieted, Arav returned to his chambers. The music faded. The laughter disappeared. Only the soft glow of candles remained. He stood before the mirror, staring at his reflection. The crown rested upon his head. Heavy, polished, powerful. Slowly, he reached up and removed it. He placed the crown gently on the table, where it gleamed in the candlelight like a silent witness to his thoughts. For a long moment, he simply stared at it. "This," he murmured softly, "is all they see." The silence in the room felt honest, almost comforting. "For 1 year," Arav whispered, his voice steady but filled with quiet resolve, "I will live without this. Not as a prince, not as a future king, but as a man." He did not announce his decision. He did not seek permission. The choice belonged to him alone. And in that stillness, with the crown resting untouched beside him, Prince Arav made a decision no royal history had ever recorded. A decision that would lead him away from wealth, away from certainty, and toward a truth that gold had never shown him. Beyond the palace walls, the city slept peacefully, unaware that its prince was preparing to disappear into its streets. And somewhere in that vast, ordinary world, the answer to his deepest question was waiting. Dawn arrived softly, as if the world itself was holding its breath. The palace, usually alive with movement at sunrise, remained still. Guards stood at their posts, unaware that behind one quiet corridor, a prince was preparing to vanish. Arav stood in a small chamber away from the royal wings. The golden robes of royalty lay folded on a chair, untouched. In their place, he lifted a set of worn clothes, simple, faded, and unfamiliar to his hands. The fabric felt rough against his skin, lacking the comfort he had always known. He dressed slowly. Each layer felt like a farewell. There were no jewels to fasten, no insignias to display, no crown to weigh down his head. When he finally looked into the mirror, the man staring back at him was unrecognizable. Not because he looked poor, but because he looked ordinary. For the first time in his life, no title followed his reflection. Before leaving, Arav paused at the palace doorway. Behind him lay marble halls, certainty, and a future already written. Ahead lay streets he had only ever watched from above. He took a breath, not as a prince, but as a man, and stepped forward. No guards followed. No servants called his name. No one stopped him. Outside the palace gates, the city was waking. Vendors prepared their stalls. Workers hurried through narrow streets. Life moved with a rhythm unconnected to royal schedules. And just like that, Prince Arav disappeared. He became just another face in the crowd. At first, the noise overwhelmed him. Voices overlapped, carts rattled across stone paths, footsteps echoed in every direction. No one bowed. No one stepped aside. People brushed past him without apology. It was unsettling and strangely liberating. The streets felt colder than marble halls ever had. Shadows clung to corners where sunlight struggled to reach. The air carried the scent of dust, sweat, and effort. Arav wrapped his arms around himself, realizing how exposed he felt without layers of silk and security. Hunger arrived faster than he expected. By midday, his stomach tightened with a quiet ache. In the palace, meals arrived without asking. Here, food had to be earned, begged for, or waited upon. He sat on a low stone step, watching people pass. Some glanced at him briefly, their eyes already moving elsewhere. Others walked past as if he were part of the street itself, another object to avoid, another presence to ignore. For the first time in his life, no one moved aside when he walked. No space was made for him. No attention was given. No respect was assumed. People looked through him, not at him. A prince had become invisible. The realization stung more deeply than hunger. Arav felt how quickly worth vanished when wealth disappeared. How easily a human could fade into the background of another person's life. As the day stretched on, he noticed things he had never seen before. The exhaustion in a laborer's shoulders. The patience of a mother calming her child. The quiet dignity of people who owned little but carried themselves with pride. This world was harder, but it was honest. When evening approached, Arav found a place near an old wall and sat down. His body ached. His thoughts raced. Yet beneath the discomfort, something unexpected stirred within him. Relief. No one expected anything from him. No one asked for decisions or promises. No one praised or judged him. For the first time, Arav existed without performance. The silence around him felt different from the silence of the palace. This silence was not imposed, it was shared. It carried stories, struggles, and quiet resilience. As the sky darkened and lanterns flickered to life, Arav looked around at the world he had entered. He was tired. He was hungry. He was uncertain. Yet strangely, he felt free. And somewhere within that freedom, the prince sensed that this path, uncomfortable and unplanned, was leading him toward a truth he had been searching for all his life. Days passed, slow and unmerciful. Time on the streets moved differently than it did inside palace walls. There were no bells to announce the hours, no servants to mark the rhythm of the day. Morning arrived with noise, afternoon with exhaustion, and night with uncertainty. Arav learned this rhythm quickly. Each day, he sat in different corners of the city, near marketplaces, beside narrow alleys, beneath broken archways where shadows lingered longer than light. His presence blended into the background, unnoticed unless someone chose to see him. Some people tossed coins without slowing their steps. Their hands extended briefly, their eyes fixed elsewhere. The coins landed near his feet with soft metallic sounds, carrying neither warmth nor cruelty, only distance. Others walked past as if he were part of the ground itself. A few looked directly at him, then looked away just as quickly, as though acknowledging him would demand something they were unwilling to give. From these moments, Arav learned how fragile respect truly was, how quickly it disappeared when wealth did, how easily a person could lose their voice simply by losing their status. In the palace, respect was automatic. On the streets, it was earned or absent. Yet the streets taught him more than rejection. They taught him truth. There were no polished words here, no hidden intentions behind smiles. Pain did not wear masks. Hunger was not dressed in poetry. When people were tired, they showed it. When they were kind, they proved it through action rather than speech. Arav noticed the elderly man who shared half his bread with a stranger, despite having little himself. He saw a young boy guide a blind vendor through crowded streets without being asked. He watched neighbors argue fiercely in the morning and share tea together by evening. Life here was rough, but it was real. Kindness was rare, but when it appeared, it was pure. It did not seek praise. It did not expect reward. And that made it powerful. Some nights, Arav slept lightly, his senses alert to every sound. Other nights, exhaustion carried him into deep rest despite the cold stone beneath him. Each morning, he woke with new understanding and new humility. He was no longer observing the city from above. He was part of it. The hunger no longer shocked him. The cold no longer surprised him. What surprised him was how deeply he began to feel, how the lives around him stirred something within his own heart. He had been taught strategy, history, and leadership. But here, the streets taught him humanity. Then, one afternoon, as the sun softened and shadows stretched across the ground, Arav sat near an old stone well, watching the world move past him as it always had. He did not know it yet, but this moment, quiet and ordinary, was about to change everything. Because sometimes the most important lessons do not arrive with noise or ceremony. They arrive with kindness. And on that afternoon, destiny was about to speak, not through power, but through a simple act that would alter the course of his life forever. She sold flowers near an old stone well, where time seemed to move more slowly. The well stood at the edge of a small open square, its stones worn smooth by generations of hands drawing water. Nearby, the noise of the city softened just enough to allow moments of quiet. This was where she spent her days, arranging small bundles of flowers with careful attention, as though each one mattered. Her clothes were simple, clean but faded from long days under the sun. Her hands were rough from work, carrying the marks of effort and patience. Yet when she smiled, it was not practiced or polite. It was tired but real. Arav noticed her before she noticed him. There was a gentleness in the way she moved, a calm strength that did not seek attention. She spoke kindly to customers, even those who bargained unfairly. When someone couldn't afford her flowers, she often slipped a small bundle into their hands anyway, pretending it was an extra. She did not know she was being watched. Arav sat nearby, his back against a cool stone wall, his body weary from days of hunger and uncertainty. His thoughts drifted, heavy and unfocused, when he felt a presence pause in front of him. He looked up. She was standing there, holding a small cloth bundle. For a moment, she said nothing. She simply looked at him, not quickly, not with pity, not with avoidance, but with attention. "You look tired," she said softly. Then, without waiting for an answer, she asked the question that would change everything. "Are you hungry?" Her voice carried no judgment, no hesitation, no fear. Before Arav could respond, she sat beside him and opened the cloth. Inside was a modest meal, nothing special, nothing abundant, just enough. She broke it in half and handed a portion to him. Arav hesitated. No one had done this for him before. Not like this. Not without conditions. She did not ask his name. She did not ask his story. She did not ask what he could offer in return. She simply shared. As he ate, slowly and carefully, warmth spread through him. Not just from the food, but from the gesture itself. He realized how long it had been since someone had treated him as a person rather than a position. They sat in silence for a while. The city continued around them. Footsteps passed. Voices rose and faded. But in that small space near the well, time felt suspended. "My name is Mira," she said eventually, adjusting the flowers beside her. "Aar," he stopped himself. He chose a simpler name instead. She smiled, accepting it without question. They spoke of small things. The weather. The well. The way flowers seemed to brighten even the dullest days. She spoke of her work with quiet pride, not as a struggle, but as a life she had learned to accept. Arav listened. No one interrupted him. No one watched closely. No one measured his words. For the first time in his life, he was not being evaluated. As the sun dipped lower, Mira gathered her remaining flowers. Before leaving, she placed a small bundle beside Arav. "For later," she said. Then she stood and walked away, her figure blending into the crowd. Arav remained seated long after she was gone, his heart unsteady in a way he had never felt before. In a world that had taught him to expect nothing without cost, someone had offered kindness freely. Her name echoed in his thoughts. Mira. And for the first time since stepping beyond the palace gates, Arav felt something he had never truly known, even within walls of gold. He felt seen.